I think my biggest enemy when I was trying to build an audience was thinking that you have to be young or beautiful or the most talented or most intelligent person in the room. No, you just have to do a few things that I'll tell you. In today's video, I want to talk about how to stop procrastinating and finally build a successful online platform. Have you ever had a friend get the success you wish you had? I have. It was 2012 and I had just moved to Cleveland when one of my good friends broke out in a big way. I don't want to use his real name, and he was very charming and well liked. And he was also really good with the ladies. So we'll call him Fabio. Yes, Fabio, I like that. It fits him. Anyway, Fabio had a very popular blog, and he landed himself a huge book deal. He'd won a prestigious writing award, and Fabio was on top of the world.
I'm the king of the world!
Now, I'll be the first person to admit it. Fabio deserved it. He's a really good writer. In fact, I think that's a big part of why our friendship really was easy and took off the way it did. We were both very passionate about writing, and we had so much fun kind of banding back and forth with wordplay and, being clever and coming up with funny things to say to each other. And I was very happy for Fabio, mostly.
Here it comes.
Because there was a nasty underbelly to that happiness. A dull ache, if you will. One that was quieter, but definitely there, and very sharp and painful. In public, I'm expressing my genuine happiness for Fabio, cheering him on, congratulating him. But in private, I'm a touch sad, because I wished it were me. At that point in my life, I had some success with both writing and music. It had started very young. I'd even supported myself with them. Didn't support myself well, mind you, but I was technically a professional. It was a hard scrabble existence, and I got tired of that instability and the insecurity financially. And at a certain point, I shifted away from starving artist mode, and I started looking at boring, steady jobs. And I was doing that kind of work when my friend hit it big, doing the thing I really wanted to be doing. And not only that, but by the time my friend did hit it big, I had stopped writing or playing much music at all, even in private, just for pleasure.
Don't do this.
So my friend's success reminded me what I'd given up, and it made me quite sad that I wasn't doing it anymore. But like I said, Fabio is a heck of a writer. So I shoved down that bitterness, that bitter half of my bittersweet feelings. And I focused on the sweet. I congratulated Fabio. I was there for him, really excited. I was even a little proud that I had this friend who'd made it. Go, Fabio! But even though I shoved down that bitterness, the ache never quite went away.
I realized I was in denial.
And then 4 years later, when I was working the job from hell, I started to write again. Not with any hopes of making it big or supporting myself, but because I was in survival mode and it was something to help me cope. Stress relief, that sort of thing. And in the process of that, I ended up revising a book that I'd written years ago. And as I was doing that, I realized I wanted to publish the book. Now, I had no platform at all, zero. At this point, I barely even had personal social media.
No connections, no allies.
And it wasn't like I could count on Fabio for publishing industry connections, because by this point, Fabio and I had fallen out as friends. It's a long story what happened, but basically there was some miscommunication at the time when he and his girlfriend were breaking up. And you know how miscommunication is. I don't really know his side of the story. We weren't communicating well. That's what a miscommunication is. But the best I could tell is that I am still friends with his ex-girlfriend, and I don't think he likes that. Anyway, so I have this goal, no platform, no industry connections. So I did a crazy thing. I decided that I would start a blog myself, and not only would I start the blog, but I would post something daily every single day.
Every single day.
Even if nobody was reading at first, and they certainly were not. And I did that. And about 6 months after I started those daily posts, I put out my book, and it did pretty well. Way better than I thought it would. It took me completely by surprise. And I didn't stop posting after that first book came out. I kept on doing the daily posts. I wrote and posted something every single day on my blog, and I did that without missing a day for over 5 years. Me, a former procrastinator. Holy hornbeam. How did that happen? Let's talk about it. Here's the secret. Something I wish I knew going into all this. You don't have to be someone special to make it. I think my biggest enemy when I was trying to build an audience, all the times that I failed, was thinking that you have to be young or beautiful or the most talented or most intelligent person in the room. No, you just have to do a few things that I'll tell you. The first is that you have to be willing to practice in public. Now, that's a little tougher than it sounds. What does it mean to practice in public? It means that you show up and you commit to posting something, which, depending on your medium, could be a blog post or a piece of art or a video, whatever it is. You show up and you post it regularly, consistently, on a schedule. When it came to blogging, I could manage a post a day. That seems like it could be a reasonable frequency for something like short form video for video shorts. But for something more intensive, like a longer form video, you might be doing something like posting once a week. Now, the precise interval doesn't matter. More often is typically better, provided it doesn't burn out you or your audience. Anyway, what's important is that you are doing a release regularly. Ideally at the same time of day for daily, or the same day of the week for weekly. But that's only half of practicing in public. The other half is just as important, and it's the half that's scary for people. Here it is. It is extremely important that you give yourself permission to be terrible. You are allowed to absolutely suck when you make these posts. You might be asking yourself what the heck I'm on about here. You don't want to post crappy stuff, right? I didn't want to. Nobody really wants to post crappy stuff.
Not unless you're congenitally insane or irretrievably stupid, no.
And I'm not saying you should post absolute crap, but what I am saying is you should know that if you post something that's bad, it's not the end of the world. Especially when you're small and you're obscure and you're trying to get used to being creative on a regular basis. If you focus too much on trying to make what you're making absolutely perfect, you will clam up. You will achieve nothing. You will not practice in public or in private. Most of the time, you'll fall out of the habit. Believe me, I've done it.
But we're going to learn from those mistakes.
Paradoxically, trying to do a good job, or at least worrying about doing a bad job, can make it difficult to produce anything. There's a fun story here from the great book, Art and Fear, by David Bales and Ted Orland, which I'll link below. My apologies to both co-authors if I mangle the parable, but here's the quick and dirty rundown. So there's a ceramic teacher, and he's got this class of ceramic students. He says, okay, we're gonna do a challenge. We're gonna take half of you, and you are going to make as many pots as you possibly can. You know, we'll assign these arbitrary labels, like 50 pounds of pots is an A, 40 pounds is a B, and so on. You guys need to focus on just churning out the pots. And then he turns to the other half of the class, and he says, okay, you guys are the quality group. You are going to produce one pot, and you are going to make it the best pot you possibly can, and you will be graded on that pot. You need to produce a perfect pot to get an A. He set the groups off, and then it came time for grading, and a strange thing happened. All of the best pots were produced by the quantity group, the ones that were churning out the pots. The group that tried to produce perfect pots, a lot of them didn't have any pots, and they spent so much time theorizing about what perfection should look like, they had little to show for their efforts. They didn't really build their skills. That's why they say practice makes perfect. It's that same idea. Anyway, it can feel counterintuitive when you're the one down in it, but trying too hard to make perfect things actually robs you of the practice that it takes to improve. And that's what it's really about, improvement. So every time you go out there, focus on improving one thing. And don't worry about being perfect. And if you have a day where you just have to phone it in to get you to your deadline, then that's okay too. Interestingly, some of my most popular posts were ones I wrote. This is a true story, because I had another piece in mind that I was really excited about, an essay, and I was going to link back to a basic concept in this other post. So I sat down half asleep and dashed out these essays that were literally there so I could link back to them, so I wouldn't have to explain in my later blog post. Some of those posts, the ones that I was just dashing off, my most popular work of all time. So you don't know. It's actually very hard as a creator to evaluate your own work and to know what will be inherently valuable to your audience too. And as you put yourself out there and you get used to it, you get a better sense of it though. So another reason practicing in public is really helpful is that it gives you that feedback and you get a better idea of where what you do and you like doing and what people really want overlap, which is the sweet zone. Okay, I said there were a few things, right? So that's practicing in public. That's number one. What's the second thing? Number two is recognizing your own self-sabotage and stopping it. This one is very tricky and it takes a lot of self-knowledge, but it's totally worth it. I know a lot about self-sabotage. I did it for years, and even now I have days when I feel it creeping in. Now, the trouble with self-sabotage is that it doesn't walk up and say, "Hello, I am self-sabotage, nice to meet you." No, it's stuff that sounds perfectly reasonable at first blush. Stuff I've heard all the time and stuff I've even said. It often starts with these words. "Oh, I'd like to do that, but I'm too busy. I don't know how. I'm not techie enough. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not talented enough. Oh, I'd like to do that, but I'm scared of the mean comments. I'd like to do that, but I don't want my family and friends to think I'm silly." And probably the most insidious of all, one that links right into perfectionism, because after all, procrastination isn't about laziness, it's often about anxiety and perfectionism, is the following. "I'm almost ready, but..." And it could be, "I need the right equipment, the right lighting. I need to get better at video editing. I need an agent. I need specific software. I'm almost ready, but..." Again, these are very reasonable. They're very common. I've been on both sides of these. And probably the hardest and most important step is recognizing these as forms of self-sabotage. Perfectionists are particularly good at convincing themselves they're not ready. I am a recovering perfectionist who is the daughter of two perfectionists and am married to a perfectionist husband. So I know a lot about perfectionism. I'll tell you one thing that helped me, particularly with YouTube. And while this is most dramatically linked to YouTube, it still applies somewhat to other forms of creating. So here it is. When you're doing a YouTube channel and you are the talent, the host, the star of the channel, you have two different ways you can be. And they call this the Superman and Clark Kent dichotomy. So basically, you can be the everyday, relatable person who isn't an expert, but does their best and is kind of figuring it out as they go along, and that guy is Clark Kent. Or you can try to be Superman. And if you're trying to be Superman, you are super talented, super knowledgeable, you don't make mistakes, you always look good. People should look up to you, envy you, what have you. And a lot of people who are new to being content creators think from the outside looking in that to get an audience to do well, you have to be Superman. And I think part of this is that we usually only notice most of the big content creators after they've made it. I mean, that's because they're obscure before that. They have a niche audience that kind of grew with them. A lot of the big names, most people, by definition, don't see them until they've become mainstream. But if you look back a lot of times in the early times on those channels or in those platforms, you can see them unless they've removed it. Some of the creators remove this phase.
Someone's covering their tracks.
But if they've left it, a lot of times you can go back and see when they were just bumbling through, when they didn't know what they were doing, when they were getting in their reps and getting a little better each video. And it was during that Clark Kent phase that people fell in love with them. Furthermore, there are still people who are mainstream and big who are kind of bumbling in every day and they don't profess to have any specific knowledge and they're just likable. And even after they break through and have a big platform, they stay Clark Kent. Anyway, there's been some studies that a lot of the channel makers and YouTube gurus have done, and what they found is that people like Clark Kent more than Superman. It's much easier to grow, especially when you're small. So showing up, practicing in public, accepting your imperfections, maybe starting before you feel like you are completely ready, can actually be part of what makes you successful. You know what they say, done is better than perfect. Getting something finished is better than taking forever and never doing it. And look, the reality is you are gonna be obscure when you start. You might as well just take that time to practice and figure out what you're doing and get your stuff out there and get a few hardcore fans. Because that's the other thing too. People talk about the mean comments on their families and friends, thinking they're silly. from personal experience, from someone who's built multiple online platforms before, it takes the haters a while to show up. There's nobody there in the beginning, and it's really not as bad as you think. For example, I was really nervous to start my first channel that I was on camera for. It's actually a travel channel I run with my partner where we're traveling around in our RV. I was terrified about the mean comments I was going to get. I am not a small woman. I am geeky. I can be a little awkward. I'm nerdy. I thought for sure people were going to make fun of my weight, my appearance, my voice, my bearing, all of it. And no, they were actually very lovely for the most part. And most of the negative stuff I got is people didn't like the brand of RV I drove. It's really easy to get yourself built up about things that aren't going to happen and to horribilize and catastrophize and worry and never get out there. But it's really not as bad as what you imagine. Take it from me. And even the times when people have been mean, sometimes they're so unhinged and so funny, you just have to laugh. You get a thick skin faster than you would expect. So it doesn't bother me anymore. And it really is only a thing on my larger platforms. And by that point, there's so many nice people, it really ends up canceling out. It's so rewarding that you really don't care at that point. As far as your friends and family, I'll tell you a little secret. This surprised me. So I've written 7 books at this point, 2,000 articles. I've got a couple of video channels. I have another business I run with some friends. I'm doing a lot. Anyway, I actually wrote a book about my real life at one point. You know, I changed some details and things like that. There are people in my life who are characters in that book that have not read the book. Like most of them, like the vast majority of them have not read the book, have not read my other work. They're not identifiable to anybody else. And that's about them. So like my other work, like there's like nobody in my life that's read everything I've written. A few of my friends, maybe once my stuff got popular, started to follow me, but in the beginning I had almost no one reading my work, and that included my friends. You don't have to publicize it among your friends. Your friends aren't your target audience. It didn't mess up my life one bit. It's been good. And I have really put myself out there. I've said some very TMI things in my day, in my times as a writer. No social problems whatsoever. Anyway, that's today's advice for creators. I'll have some more for you later. It was really nice talking to you today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.